Chapter 2. Discreet Inquiries. My dreams were fragmented with memories of my time as an MP in Europe. A number of faces passed before me as I interviewed them. The shadow was above me at the pier, kept popping up, but no face appeared with it. I dreamt of an argument I had with my superiors in the MPs. They kept pounding the table to drive a point home. Something was banging in my head. No, not in my head. At the door. I was waking up from a very unrestful sleep. Slowly. Normally I like to stretch, yawn, stretch again. But the banging startled me. I jerked awake and fell on the floor. Shit. Mickey, are you in there? The door's locked. Open up. Yeah, just a minute, I said. My mind was trying to come up with reasons why I would be here, but none of them seemed to make sense, even to me. I decided to see who it was and play it by ear. I yelled again that I was coming. I stuffed the Colt into the bag and latched it up. I was still wiping the sleep from my eyes as I pulled the chair from under the doorknob and opened it slowly. I used my foot as a doorstop. "You're not Mickey," said a heavy-set man in a trench coat and a matching rumpled fedora that screamed underpaid cop. No, I'm not," I said, letting him set the pace. "You his new partner?" he asked. I wasn't sure how to answer that, because I wasn't sure if he knew who it was. So I temporized. "I'm not sure," I said. Good answer. I wouldn't be sure of anything with Mickey Phillips does either. "Say, can I come in?" "I don't mean to be rude, but who are you?" I asked. "Reverse the roles, put the other man on the defensive, and see what I can learn." "Oh, sure." He opened up his coat and showed me his badge. Lieutenant Sanders, SFPD. I stepped back, opened the door, and let the lieutenant in. Sorry, Lieutenant. Mickey didn't tell me someone would be calling today. Gave me keys so I could flop here last night," I shrugged. "By the way, what's your name?" he asked. I'd thought about handing him a phony moniker, but those fickle sisters were watching me, and I was pretty sure that this is a case of honesty would be the best policy. Otherwise, I might end up in the clink. Besides, I kept telling myself, except for flopping the night, I hadn't really done anything wrong. I could tell that the flatfoot was already suspicious of me. "Watcher, Jonas Watcher," I said, holding out my hand. He took it in a firm handshake without any contest. I responded in kind. I had a strange feeling that I could like the lieutenant. He didn't actually smile, but the tension was lessened. I wasn't out of the woods, but I wasn't about to be hauled off to jail, at least not just yet. "You ain't seen Mickey today?" More of a statement than a question. "I got tossed the keys and the address last night, and to be honest, I can't say Mickey was the one who gave them to me. I couldn't have been more truthful than that. Right?" We went into the inner office, and I took the sofa while the lieutenant circled the desk, and then sat down in one of the client chairs. In his little walk about the desk, he looked around. He was determining whether or not I had rummaged through the desk. And everything else in the office was as it should be. I was glad I hadn't succumbed to that particular urge last night. The lieutenant reached into his coat pocket and pulled out some papers. He handed them out to me, and I took them. I tried not to act surprised. That's the application form for your PI license under Mickey. His info's already filled out. You fill out yours and drop them by the precinct later today, and I'll see that they get processed. So Mickey was looking to add someone to his staff. We have to do a background check, he continued, but if nothing flags, you'll have your license in a couple of weeks. I told Mickey you could work under his license as a temporary help until yours came through. Thanks, Lieutenant. When he asked me for the papers, he was still deciding on candidates. That's why your part is blank. You got a piece registered? Well, there's an old Navy Colt in the bag there, but it's not registered to be carried concealed. The lieutenant leapt to his feet, startling me. Are you kidding me? I thought Mickey was kidding me. Can I see it? I knew the Colt was going to be trouble. I was hesitant, but I had gone this far. In for a dime, might as well go for the whole buck. But I didn't want him going through the bag. There might be something there that would hang me up. Could you toss me the bag, I asked. The lieutenant bent down, picked up by the handle. It was still wet. He watched me closely as he handed it over. Dropped in a puddle, I said. I slowly opened the bag enough for the Colt to be visible, then held it up so the lieutenant could see it. Go ahead, take it out, I said. If he was concerned about fingerprints, he might not take it. He reached in slowly and lifted it out admiringly. He weighed it in his hand and turned it so that he could examine it more closely. So help me if that gun is a murder weapon. Single action, Loaded? He asked. I looked at him and he suddenly grinned. Stupid question. He clicked out the carriages from the cylinder and handed them to me. He spun the gun around a couple of times, cocked back the hammer, aimed at the window, and pulled the trigger. Click. Okay, so fingerprints weren't an issue. That'll drop a man. Can't really carry it concealed. The bulge would stick out, but a nice piece. He spun it around in his hand and then turned it over to me, butt first. I took it, dropped it into the bag along with the cartridges. Paperwork is to carry. Sorry. The paperwork to carry is in there too. Fill it out. Get it in before you go to work, okay? The lieutenant turned to leave, and I walked with him to the outer door. We shook hands, and he was gone. I closed the door and locked it. That was just too lucky. He was expecting someone here, either Mickey or his new partner. I went back to the inner office and dropped on the sofa, shaking my head. I needed to get out of here and fast. Maybe the running bag belonged to Mickey. Maybe the running bag belonged to whoever Mickey was going to hire. But then, why was it used as a club to take me out? Since the bag had been lost, or was going to be lost, in the bay with my body, Mickey's unnamed partner, maybe dead, or held captive somewhere, about to be dead. Sooner or later, one or the other was going to turn up, and I didn't want to be around when crap started falling out of the sky. Suddenly, I was hungry again. I wanted a drink. I had a little time before things got too strange. I figured I'd go down to the diner on the corner, grab some grub, come back, pick up the bag, and leave town. I would hold off having a drink until, well, I was in the clear. I removed the money belt and dropped it into the bag. No need to tempt the fickle bitches. I put the bag under the desk, hidden behind the modesty panel, and headed out. I really wanted a drink. But eating was a better idea. In a newspaper, I had to see if anything had been reported that might help me figure out what was going on. At the diner, I took a stool at the counter that gave me a view of who was coming in and signaled to the waitress for services. She was a cute kid, early 20, blonde, fairly new to waiting tables. She still had that freshness about her and a spring in her step that indicated she was either new or an eternal optimist. "What'll you have?" she asked. "The number one on your menu, coffee, and a newspaper if you got one." "Sure, but we're out of newspapers, unless you don't mind a used one." "Sold," I said. "I'll take it." Several people came and went, but nothing exciting happened. I was beginning to feel like I was overreacting. The waitress brought me a rumpled paper, and that seemed intact, and she was quick with coffee and the breakfast. I leafed through the paper. I didn't find anything that would help clear what had happened to Mickey's partner. I even waded through the classifieds in case there was something there. Since I came up empty, I decided to grab the bag and blow this town. I had money. L.A. was looking pretty good to me just now. I would head back to the office and pick up the bag, and then I was out of here. I have to watch that, don't I? I'm falling off. Not that you're going to watch this video much, but... Okay, I was out of here. That's just bizarre. There you go. I arrived back in the office building, and this time I took the elevator up. I stepped out. Did I say the sisters were fickle bitches? When I got back to the office, she'd made other arrangements. They had made other arrangements for me. In the form of a gorilla dressed as a chauffeur carrying a briefcase, and a lady, and I mean one with class. She was a tall brunette, older, but she would still leave men drooling in her wake as she walked past. They were standing in front of the office door waiting. I could ignore them and walk by, pretend it wasn't me that had belonged to the office. But the bag under the desk had the money belt, and I wasn't about to leave without it. I walked up to the mismatched pair and introduced myself, using my real name and associating myself with Mickey Phillips. The woman was calm, cool, and collected. The bodybuilder chauffeur, though, looked like he was a deer caught in the headlights. "You're not William Mason," she said. "No. Like I said, I'm Jonas Watcher. I'm kind of holding the fort until Mickey gets back. Do you want to leave a message?" I asked, hoping that she would decide to come back later. "We had better come in," she said. "I have something to leave, and I want to make sure it's safe in Mr. Phillips' office." I nodded, smiled, unlocked the door. She watched me closely as I opened it. Having keys and knowing which one to use on the door seemed to ease her mind. I escorted her into the inner office, and the chauffeur followed us in. I had the feeling that driving was only a small part of what he did. Muscle and security were the other two. I indicated for them to sit down in the client chairs while I sat in the chair behind the power desk. I pulled open a drawer, took out a pad and pencil, and set up to take notes, just like it was second nature. "Sorry, no secretary," I said. "Yes, I know. Getting married. Mr. Phillips already told me. My name is Elizabeth Stanton from New York. Are you familiar with my case?" You could have knocked me over with a feather. She was a lady, a really rich lady. And for that case, there were many possibilities. Her father-in-law was rumored to be connected to the New York underworld. Her husband had disappeared. There had been threats against her. She was a queen in the New York society, and her brother was running for senator in Massachusetts. She was holding some big art show in San Francisco, and she'd been seen in the company of a Hollywood producer in Los Angeles. Any one of those could have been a case. I'm just taking care of the office right now, Mrs. Stanton. Mickey has a secure box here in the desk, and I can open it for you and store whatever you have for him. She turned her head to the chauffeur. Joseph, take out the file. The chauffeur opened the briefcase and rummaged a bit looking for the file. As he shifted, a bulge under his arm became much more noticeable. Ape Man was packing. I decided to continue to play it straight, even though, as I kept doing so, I seemed to be getting in deeper into something I knew nothing about, and it was getting more difficult to extricate myself. He pulled out the folder, put it on the desk. Mrs. Stanton slid it over to me. I picked it up and started to put it away in the secure drawer when Mrs. Stanton stopped me. No, I want you to read it, study it. Mr. Phillips was quite adamant that whoever we met here would be the operative to handle my case. Geez, was everybody expecting to meet someone here? I seemed to be the only person present, and I wasn't supposed to be here. The sisters' fate were out there somewhere, laughing up a storm at my predicament. I slowly opened the folder and briefly leafed through the papers. I don't expect you to read it all right now, Mr. Watcher, but I believe the retainer there should be enough to get you started looking for where my husband is. The last few checks I sent him were picked up here in San Francisco at general delivery. I have to go down to Los Angeles for a day, and when I get back, you can update me. I'll be staying at the Palace. Of course she would. The retainer was a cashier's check for $2,000 made out to cash. I nodded knowingly, not looking the least surprised, and rose as Mrs. Stanton stood up. Joseph, we're going. Mr. Watcher has much to do. We'll see ourselves out. I watched as they left. The chauffeur seemed confused and somewhat distressed. She, on the other hand, was cool, and as she walked away, she swayed in a way that left me drooling just a little bit. This was getting too crazy. I woke up over 12 hours ago, hurting, hungover, and broke, with absolutely nothing going on in my life. Now, someone has attempted to kill me. I was sitting on over a year's income and mixed up in something that could only blow up in my face. And I was seriously considering not running for the hills. I couldn't go to Los Angeles. She would be there. I know it's a big place, but the sisters are messing with me, and I didn't dare take 2 G's without looking into her husband's whereabouts. Any minute now, Mickey Phillips would walk through that door and all hell would break loose. Then all of a sudden it hit me. I could be walking into something where I'm going to be the biggest patsy of all time. 2 people are looking for someone, and I'm here. And I'm him, except I'm not him. And that him could be dead. And, well, who killed him? The only viable suspect would be me. I've been playing it fast and loose, and so far I was still on my feet, and I intended to stay that way. If I boogied now, it would all come down on me. I had to do 2 things. Find out where Mrs. Stanton's husband was, and locate William Mason, and see if he's dead, and if he is, prove that I didn't do it. Where the hell is Mickey Phillips? I sat down at the desk and started filling out the forms. Luckily, no one came in while I was giving the police a true breakdown of my life until now. When I finished, I put the folder that Mrs. Stanton had brought, including the check, into a secure drawer and headed for the local precinct. I hoped the lieutenant would still be happy to see me, because right now I figured the roof was about to cave in. I took a deep breath. My next steps? Apply for a PI license and a carry permit, and stay sober. It was the only way I was going to get out of this alive. And you can stop laughing, you fickle bitches.